One of these bells was said to save lives, another to summon death. Can you tell which is which? Watch to find out. And if you want more hidden truths from inside the convent, this video is for you. Chapter 1: Dawn in the Convent. The hidden symbolism of bells. You wake not to sunlight, but to the deep bronze voice of the bell that has summoned sisters to prayer for 3 centuries before your birth. The sound rolls through stone corridors like water through ancient channels, each note carrying the weight of countless mornings, countless souls who have risen from their narrow beds at this same hour. The bell speaks in a language older than words, and you understand its call in your bones. Your feet find the cold flagstone floor, worn smooth by generations of bare souls padding toward devotion. The cell around you breathes with the rhythm of stone walls that have witnessed 10,000 dawns. Your window, no larger than a prayer book, frames a sky still drunk on night. Stars fading like dying candles against the approaching light. The air carries the scent of beeswax and frankincense, remnants of yesterday's vespers still clinging to the walls like holy ghosts. You pull the coarse wool habit over your linen chemise, feeling the fabric's familiar weight settle across your shoulders like a gentle hand. The wool scratches slightly against your skin, a reminder that comfort is not the purpose here. Your fingers find the rope cincture at your waist, knotting it with movements so practiced they have become prayer themselves. 3 knots for the vows that bind you: poverty, chastity, obedience. Each morning you tie these knots, and each morning they tie you high, you more firmly to this life you have chosen. The corridor outside your cell stretches into shadow, punctuated by pools of amber light from oil lamps that never sleep. These flames have burned continuously for decades, tended by hands that understand fire as both servant and sacred symbol. The light flickers against stone that remembers the Roman roads from which these blocks were quarried, remembers the hands that cut and carried them, the prayers that blessed their placement. Every stone in this wall has been consecrated by centuries of prayer, until the very mortar seems to hum with devotion. You move through the darkness with steps that barely whisper against stone, joining the river of silent figures flowing toward the chapel. Each sister emerges from her cell like a ghost materializing from memory, her face pale and serene in the lamplight. You know these faces as intimately as the prayers on your lips, yet in the pre-dawn silence, they seem transformed, ethereal, as if dawn has the power to make saints of ordinary women. Sister Marguerite glides past you, her movement so fluid she might be floating above the floor. At 73 years, she has walked these corridors for more than half a century, her feet finding their way through darkness as surely as roots find water. You have seen her tend the sick with hands that know exactly where pain lives in the human body. Have watched her prepare the dead with a tenderness that makes death seem like a doorway rather than an ending. The chapel doors stand open, breathing out centuries of accumulated prayer. The scent of incense meets you first, sweet and heavy, carrying undertones of myrrh and sandalwood that speak of lands far beyond these walls. Beneath the incense lies the deeper smell of old wood, beeswax, and that indefinable aroma of stone that has absorbed countless tears, countless whispered confessions, countless moments when human souls have reached toward the divine. You take your place in the choir stall, the wood worn smooth beneath your palms. This seat has held other bodies, other hearts, other hopes. The oak was cut from trees that grew during the reign of kings, whose names are now carved on tombstones, shaped by craftsmen who understood that they were creating more than furniture. They were carving prayers from living wood, fashioning vessels for voices that would sing to God long after their own hands had returned to dust. The chapel fills with the rustle of wool habits, the soft settling of bodies into prayer. 47 sisters call this convent home, though only 43 remain now. Sister Agnes passed into God's hands during the harsh winter 2 months past, her lungs finally surrendering to the damp cold that seeps through even the thickest stone. Sister Claire departed a week after Easter, called back to tend her dying mother in the village beyond the forest. Such departures leave holes in the community like missing teeth in a familiar smile. Mother Superior Agnes takes her place at the front, her presence commanding even in silence. At 61 years, she has guided this community through plagues, famines, and the changing whims of bishops who sometimes remember that convents exist. Her hands, gnarled now with age and countless hours copying manuscripts in the cold scriptorium, fold with practiced grace. Those hands have delivered babies, prepared medicines, and blessed the dying. They have written letters to kings and beggars alike, always in the same careful script that makes every word seem sacred. The first bell ceases its song, and in the settling silence, you hear the heartbeat of the convent itself. Somewhere deep in the walls, timber creaks as it expands with the approaching dawn. Water drips from the eaves outside, marking time like a liquid clock. A mouse scurries through the walls, following paths worn by its ancestors through generations of small, secret journeys. Now comes the second bell, higher and clearer than the first, its voice cutting through the darkness, like silver thread through black silk. This bell was cast in the foundries of Ghent, blessed by 3 bishops, and installed during a summer when the plague passed over this place like the angel of death, taking the surrounding villages, but leaving the convent untouched. The sisters say it was the bell's voice that turned death away, though you suspect it had more to do with the herbal knowledge that keeps the sick bay stocked with remedies, and the wisdom that knows when to close gates against the infected world beyond. The bell master who rang these bronze voices has been dead for 20 years, his duties passed to Sister Beatrice, who learned the language of bells from listening to their songs through countless seasons. Each bell has its own voice, its own purpose, its own particular way of calling souls to prayer. The great bell that woke you speaks for matins, the night office that begins each monastic day. Its bronze voice carries farther than any human call, reaching the village 2 miles distant, where farmers rise to tend cattle and merchants prepare for the day's trading. But here, enclosed within walls that separate you from that world of commerce and human striving, the bell's call means something different. It summons you not to labor that earns coin, but to work that nourishes souls. It calls you to join the ancient rhythm that has pulsed through Christian communities since the desert fathers first gathered to pray in the Egyptian wilderness centuries ago. Sister Beatrice's footsteps echo from the bell tower above, descending the narrow stone stairs that wind through the tower's heart like a spiral prayer. She has been awake since the darkest hour before dawn, preparing for this moment when day begins to push against night's dominion. Her hands know the weight of each bell rope, the precise pull required to wake bronze throats to song. She moves through the bell chamber like a conductor commanding an orchestra of ancient voices, each bell responding to her touch as if it were alive. The bells themselves are marvels of medieval engineering and artistry, cast in sand molds that required weeks to prepare. Each bell's bronze skin bears inscriptions in Latin that most of the sisters can read, and some in older languages that only Mother Superior can decipher. Vox Domini in Virtute declares the great bell. The voice of the Lord is mighty. The smaller bells carry their own messages, prayers for protection, invocations of saints, fragments of psalms that ring out their praise every time bronze strikes bronze. The casting of these bells required precise knowledge of metallurgy that few possess. The bronze itself is an alloy of copper and tin mixed in proportions that master founders guard like sacred secrets. Too much tin and the bell rings harsh and brittle. Too little and its voice becomes muddy and dull. The perfect bell sings clear and strong, its voice carrying for miles on still air, penetrating even the deepest sleep to summon souls to prayer. You settle deeper into your choir stall, feeling the wood warm beneath your body. Around you, sisters shift and settle, habits rustling like leaves in an autumn wind. The familiar sounds of preparation fill the chapel, the soft whisper of pages turning as prayer books open, the gentle creak of kneelers being lowered, the almost inaudible sighs as bodies find their prayer positions. Sister Catherine, who sits 2 places to your right, moves with the careful precision of someone whose joints protest each morning's awakening. At 58, she carries the accumulated weight of decades spent bent over manuscripts in the scriptorium, copying sacred texts with a hand so steady that bishops request her work specifically. Her fingers are permanently stained with ink, branded by years of devotion to preserving the written word of God. The manuscripts she copies are more than religious texts. They are lifelines connecting your isolated community to the wider world of Christian learning. In her careful script, she preserves not only the Psalms and Gospels, but also treatises on medicine, agriculture, and natural philosophy. These texts will outlive the hands that write them, carrying knowledge through dark times when libraries burn and scholars flee. The 3rd bell begins to sing, its voice younger and brighter than its bronze siblings. This bell was cast only 50 years ago, commissioned to replace one that cracked during a particularly harsh winter when ice formed in the bell chamber and bronze grew brittle as glass. The replacement was blessed during the Feast of the Assumption, and its first song rang out over fields heavy with summer grain, calling harvesters to pause in their work and lift their faces toward heaven in gratitude. With the 3rd bell's voice comes the first pale suggestion of dawn at the windows. The thick glass, bubbled and uneven, transforms the approaching light into something liquid and alive. These windows were glazed by craftsmen who understood that imperfect glass creates perfect beauty, each bubble and irregularity catching light like a jewel. Through them, you can see the world beyond beginning to wake from its night's rest. Though that world feels distant now, separated by more than stone walls and locked gates, Mother Superior rises, her movement fluid despite her years. Her voice, when she speaks, carries the authority of one who has wrestled with God in prayer and emerged blessed rather than broken. Let us begin, she says, and though her words are simple, they carry the weight of centuries. These same words have begun countless services in countless convents, linking your community to an unbroken chain of prayer that stretches back through time to the first Christians who gathered in secret to worship their risen Lord. The office of Matins begins not with rushing into prayer, but with silence. This silence is not empty, but full, pregnant with possibility, heavy with the accumulated prayers of all who have knelt in this chapel before you. In this silence, you can hear the building itself breathing, the stone walls expanding and contracting with temperature changes, the ancient oak beams settling deeper into their appointed places. You close your eyes and let the silence enter you like water filling an empty vessel. This is the silence that existed before the world began, the silence from which God spoke light into being. It is the silence between heartbeats, between thoughts, between one breath and the next. In this silence, the boundary between self and prayer, between individual and community, begins to dissolve. The chapel around you holds this silence like a chalice holds wine, sacred and transforming. Every surface has been consecrated by centuries of prayer, every stone blessed by the tears and joy of those who have knelt here seeking God's face. The altar, carved from a single block of marble quarried from mountains whose peaks touch heaven, gleams pale in the growing light. Upon it rest the sacred vessels that transform bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. Mysteries that your rational mind cannot grasp, but your heart accepts with faith deeper than understanding. Behind the altar, a painted crucifix looks down with eyes that seem to see directly into your soul. The artist who painted these eyes understood suffering in a way that only someone who has walked through personal darkness can comprehend. Christ's face shows not only the agony of crucifixion, but also the peace of one who has accepted God's will completely. These eyes have watched over countless services, countless moments when sisters have brought their deepest fears and highest hopes before the throne of grace. The painted blood on Christ's hands seems to glisten in the candlelight, never fully dry, always fresh like a wound that refuses to heal. This is the mystery at the heart of your faith. That suffering can be transformed into love, that death can become the doorway to eternal life. That human weakness can become the very place where divine strength takes root. Sister Mary Joseph begins the antiphon, her voice rising clear and sweet in the stone space. Her voice has been trained not by human teachers, but by years of prayer, shaped by the acoustics of this chapel, until it has become an instrument perfectly tuned to praise. Other voices join hers, creating harmonies that seem to rise from the stones themselves, as if the building has found its voice and joins in the eternal song of worship. The harmonies weave together like threads in a tapestry, each voice contributing its unique color to the whole. Sister Margaret's deep alto provides the foundation, steady and sure as the earth itself. Sister Frances adds her soprano, like silver light dancing on water. Between them, the other voices find their places, creating music that is more than the sum of its parts, music that seems to open doorways in the air itself. The psalms flow from memory, words so deeply embedded in your consciousness that they feel like your own thoughts given voice. O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth shall declare your praise. These words have been sung in this place for generations, each voice adding its note to an eternal song that began in heaven and will continue long after these stones have crumbled to dust. As you sing, you feel the presence of all who have sung these words before you. The sisters who founded this convent 4 centuries ago, their voices still echoing in the stones. The countless women who have sought God within these walls, their prayers woven into the very air you breathe. They are not gone, but present, part of the communion of saints that transcends death and time. The bell tower above you houses 5 bells in total, each with its own voice and purpose. The great bell that woke you weighs nearly a ton, its bronze voice capable of carrying across 3 valleys on a clear morning. The smallest bell, no bigger than a cooking pot, rings with a voice pure as mountain water, used to call late sisters to meals or mark the hours during silent periods. These bells were tuned using mathematical principles known to medieval bell founders, each note precisely calculated to create harmonious relationships with its bronze siblings. When rung together, they create chords that can move listeners to tears or lift hearts to joy. Their combined voices more powerful than any human choir. Sister Beatrice has learned to read the bell's moods, knowing when changes in weather will affect their voices, understanding how temperature and humidity alter bronze's song. She can predict rain by the way the great bell's voice carries, can tell the season by subtle changes in each bell's tone. Her relationship with these bronze voices goes deeper than technique. It is a conversation between human soul and metal spirit that spans decades. The morning light grows stronger, filtering through windows that tell their own stories in colored glass. Saint Benedict, founder of your order, stands eternal guard in the window above the altar, his painted robes flowing like water, his eyes fixed on horizons beyond earthly sight. The glass pieces that form his image were cut and fitted by artisans who understood that light itself could become prayer. That color could carry meaning deeper than words. Each piece of colored glass in these windows was selected for its particular shade and clarity, arranged to create images that teach as well as beautify. The deep blue of Mary's robes speaks of heaven's infinite depth. The gold of Christ's halo captures the light of divine glory. The green of painted gardens reminds you that God's creation continues to bloom even within these enclosed walls. The scriptorium, where you will spend much of this day copying manuscripts, contains windows designed specifically for the work done there. The glass is clearer, less decorative, allowing maximum light to reach the copying tables while still providing beauty for eyes that need rest from intensive work. Even the practical aspects of convent life have been touched by beauty, transformed by the understanding that work done for God deserves to be surrounded by loveliness. As Matins continues, your voice joins the ancient rhythm of call and response that has structured Christian worship since the earliest days of the Church. The Lord be with you. Mother Superior calls, and 40, 3 voices respond as one, and with your spirit. These words create a bridge between heaven and earth, linking your small community to the vast communion of believers scattered across the world. The prayers move through their appointed courses like water following channels carved by centuries of use. Each song, each canticle, each prayer has its proper place in the liturgical symphony, creating a pattern of worship that mirrors the patterns of creation itself. Just as day follows night and season follows season, so the prayers follow their eternal rhythm, marking time not by human clocks, but by the deeper clockwork of the soul. You think of the villages beyond these walls, where farmers are rising to tend cattle and merchants are preparing for market day. In their own way, they too participate in this daily rhythm of work and rest, though their prayers may be simpler, their devotions less formal. The bells that call you to prayer also reach their ears, reminding them that beyond the concerns of daily survival, there exists a realm of the spirit that gives meaning to all earthly labor. The great bell's final echoes fade into silence, but the silence itself becomes part of the prayer. In this silence, you can hear your own heartbeat, can feel the pulse of life that connects you to every living thing. Your breath mingles with the breath of your sisters, creating a rhythm deeper than words, more fundamental than thought. Mother Superior's voice rises again, leading you deeper into the mystery of morning prayer. Her words carry the weight of authority, not imposed from without but earned through decades of faithful service. Nights spent in prayer when others slept, days spent caring for the sick when others rested. She has held dying sisters in her arms, has written letters to families who will never see their daughters again, has made decisions that affect the spiritual welfare of every soul in this place. The candles on the altar flicker, but do not die. Their flames fed by wax made from bees that gather nectar from flowers growing in the convent garden. Even this detail connects you to the larger cycle of creation, reminding you that your prayers are supported by the work of countless creatures, each fulfilling its appointed role in God's creation. As the office continues, dawn light grows stronger, beginning to compete with candlelight for dominance in the chapel. This daily battle between flame and sun speaks to larger conflicts between darkness and light, between human effort and divine grace, between the temporal and the eternal. Soon the candles will be extinguished, their work complete until evening calls them back to service. The transition from darkness to light happens gradually, imperceptibly, like the transformation of souls through prayer. One moment, the chapel lives by candlelight alone, mysterious and intimate. The next, dawn has claimed its victory, flooding the space with natural radiance that reveals details hidden by night's gentle shadows. If you enjoyed this story and want to join me for more nights of history and mystery, subscribe now, tap the bell icon, and let's journey back in time together. Chapter 2: Sacred Duties and Unseen Labor. The morning light spills through the refectory windows like honey through cheesecloth, golden and warm against the long oak tables where you will break your fast. But first comes work, the sacred labor that transforms necessity into prayer, that makes every mundane task a conversation with the divine. Your hands, still carrying the scent of beeswax from handling prayer books, now prepare to touch earth and stone, herbs and healing oils, the materials of daily existence that sustain both body and soul. You move through corridors that breathe with the accumulated history of countless mornings like this one. The flagstones beneath your feet have been worn smooth by generations of sisters walking these paths, their steps creating channels deeper than those carved by rain. Each stone remembers the weight it has borne. Hurrying feet carrying news of births and deaths in the village beyond, slow processions bearing the sick to their beds, joyful steps dancing to celebrate feast days, when even the most austere sisters permit themselves moments of earthly happiness. The heavy oak door to the garden stands slightly ajar, releasing the green scent of growing things into the stone corridor. This garden has fed the convent for 3 centuries, its soil enriched by compost made from kitchen scraps and prayer, its fertility renewed each season by hands that understand the sacred connection between death and rebirth, between seed and harvest. Sister Rose tends the garden with the devotion of one who knows that every plant contains mysteries deeper than human understanding. At 64 years, her hands have planted and harvested through seasons that blur together like brush strokes in a painting too large to see completely. She knows which herbs heal fevers and which ones ease the pain of joints grown stiff with age. She understands the secret conversations between soil and root, between rain and leaf, between human need and plant medicine. The garden stretches before you in carefully ordered rows, each bed designed not only for practical cultivation, but also for beauty that lifts the heart toward heaven. Vegetables grow alongside flowers, herbs mingle with roses, creating a tapestry that feeds both body and spirit. This integration of practical and beautiful reflects the convent's understanding that God delights in loveliness. That holiness should nourish all the senses. You kneel in the herb garden where fennel and comfrey, vervain and meadowsweet grow in abundance. Each plant here serves a purpose beyond its own existence, contributing to the convent's medicine chest that has saved countless lives over the centuries. The knowledge of which herbs heal and which one's harm has been passed down through generations of sisters, preserved in carefully copied manuscripts that record not only recipes, but also the prayers that should accompany their preparation. Sister Rose approaches with a wicker basket worn smooth by decades of use. It's handled dark with the oils from countless hands. Her movements in the garden are sure and graceful, like a dancer who has memorized every step of an intricate performance. She knows without looking where each plant grows, can identify herbs by touch alone, understands the subtle changes that signal when medicines are ready for harvest. The comfrey needs gathering today, she tells you, her voice carrying the soft authority of one who speaks from deep knowledge. The moon wanes, and the healing spirits settle into the roots. This might sound like superstition to those who live beyond these walls, but you have seen the medicines made from plants harvested at proper times, have witnessed their power to heal when other remedies fail. The medieval understanding of medicine encompasses far more than modern minds might credit. These sisters know that the human body reflects the larger cosmos. That health depends on harmony between internal forces and external influences. They understand that healing involves not only physical remedies, but also spiritual ones. That prayer and medicine work together like two hands belonging to the same body. You begin harvesting comfrey roots, digging carefully to avoid damage, following the techniques Sister Rose learned from her predecessor, who learned from hers in an unbroken chain, stretching back to the convent's founding. The roots emerge from soil that has been worked by countless hands, enriched by centuries of careful cultivation, blessed by prayers spoken over seeds and seedlings year after year. The comfrey roots will be cleaned, dried, and ground into powder that eases the pain of broken bones and torn flesh. Mixed with honey and beeswax, they create salves that have healed wounds when surgeons' knives have failed. The sisters know that these plants contain what they call the signature of God, healing properties placed there by divine providence for human benefit. Nearby, Sister Margaret tends the roses that provide petals for rose water, used both as medicine and as a luxury that reminds the sisters that God delights in beauty as well as utility. These roses, descendants of plants brought from the Holy Land by returning pilgrims, carry in their bloodlines the soil of places where Christ walked. Their blooms release fragrance that has been described in letters to bishops as the very breath of paradise. The rose garden represents hours of labor invisible to those who see only the final bloom. Each plant requires pruning at precisely the right time, protection from insects that would devour tender shoots, careful watering during dry seasons when rain fails to fall. Sister Margaret's hands, permanently stained green from handling thorns and stems, know every rose bush individually, can predict which ones will bloom heavily and which will need extra care to produce their precious petals. The medicinal properties of roses extend far beyond their beauty. Rose water soothes inflamed eyes, eases headaches, and when mixed with wine, creates a tonic that strengthens the heart and lifts melancholy spirits. The hips that remain after petals fall provide vitamin-rich syrup that prevents scurvy during long winter months when fresh food becomes scarce. Even rose thorns serve purpose, dried and ground to create powders that stop bleeding from wounds. The knowledge required to maintain this garden would fill several volumes if fully recorded. Sister Rose can predict weather changes by observing how certain plants behave, knows which insects indicate healthy soil and which ones signal problems requiring attention. She understands the complex relationships between different plants, knowing which ones grow better together and which ones compete for nutrients or space. You move through the garden rows, gathering not only herbs, but also vegetables that will feed the community through the coming weeks. The beans climb poles cut from ash trees growing in the convent's forest, their vines reaching toward light with determination that speaks of life's fundamental drive toward growth and fulfillment. These beans, when dried, will provide protein through winter months when fresh meat becomes a rare luxury. The preservation of food requires knowledge passed down through generations of sisters who understood that survival depended on wisdom as much as prayer. Root vegetables buried in sand, filled barrels keep fresh through winter's coldest months. Apples wrapped individually in cloth and stored in cool cellars maintain their sweetness until spring's first greens appear. Herbs dried at precisely the right moment retain their healing properties year-round, providing medicine when illness strikes and physicians live too far away to reach quickly. The granary holds grain purchased from local farmers, stored in wooden bins designed to protect against rats and moisture, while allowing air circulation that prevents spoilage. The sisters know that a single spoiled grain can contaminate an entire bin. That constant vigilance and proper storage techniques mean the difference between abundance and starvation during harsh years when crops fail and trade routes become impassable. Sister Agnes oversees the preservation work with the precision of a military commander organizing a campaign. At 57 years, she has guided the convent through famines that killed thousands in surrounding villages, plagues that closed trade routes for months, and harsh winters that froze rivers solid and made travel impossible. Her knowledge of food preservation has literally kept the community alive through disasters that destroyed less prepared settlements. The techniques she employs combine practical experience with theoretical knowledge preserved in manuscripts copied from classical sources. The Romans understood food preservation principles that medieval cooks have refined and adapted to local conditions. Salt, the most precious preservative, is used sparingly but strategically, applied in precise quantities that prevent spoilage without making food ineatable. You help Sister Agnes check the barrels of salted pork stored in the cool cellars beneath the convent. Each barrel requires careful monitoring to ensure the salt brine maintains proper concentration, that no air pockets allow spoilage to begin, that the wooden staves remain tight enough to prevent contamination. The pork, purchased from local farmers during autumn slaughter time, must last through the long months when fresh meat becomes unavailable. The cellars themselves represent engineering knowledge that modern builders might envy. Dug deep into clay soil that maintains constant cool temperatures, lined with stones fitted so precisely that moisture cannot penetrate. Ventilated through carefully planned channels that allow air circulation without permitting the entry of warm air that would spoil stored food. These cellars have kept food fresh through centuries of changing weather, their design proving its worth through countless seasons. The bread making begins before dawn in the kitchen, where massive ovens built into the walls radiate warmth throughout the surrounding rooms. These ovens, constructed of clay and stone by craftsmen who understood thermodynamics instinctively, retain heat for hours after fires die down, allowing the sisters to bake multiple batches of bread from a single heating. Sister Catherine, the baker, knows the precise moment when oven temperature drops to the perfect level for bread baking. She can judge heat by holding her hand briefly inside the oven chamber, feeling the intensity of radiant warmth against her palm. Too hot and the bread crusts burn while centers remain raw. Too cool and the loaves never develop the golden crusts that signal proper baking. The bread dough itself represents ancient knowledge, preserved through centuries of careful observation and practice. The sisters maintain sourdough starters that have lived for decades. Their fermenting cultures passed from one generation of bakers to the next like living heirlooms. These starters contain wild yeasts captured from the air around the convent, microorganisms that have adapted to local conditions and produce bread with unique flavors that cannot be replicated elsewhere. You help knead the morning's bread, feeling the dough transform beneath your hands from rough mixture to smooth, elastic mass. The rhythmic motion of kneading becomes a form of prayer, your hands working in time with breathing that deepens into meditation. The wheat flour, ground from grain grown in fields blessed during planting season, carries within it the energy of sun and rain, soil and human labor. The medieval understanding of bread transcends mere nutrition, recognizing it as a sacred substance that connects human survival to divine providence. Every loaf begins with prayer, continues through work that requires patience and skill, and culminates in nourishment that sustains both body and soul. The sisters understand that bread making participates in the mystery of transformation, changing simple ingredients into something capable of sustaining life. The mill, where grain becomes flour, operates by water power channeled from the stream that flows past the convent walls. The millstones, cut from French limestone, selected for its particular grinding properties, must be dressed regularly to maintain sharp, cutting edges that produce fine flour without generating heat that would damage grain nutrients. Sister Joan, who tends the mill, has learned the stone cutting techniques from traveling craftsmen who guard their knowledge jealously. The mill wheel itself represents sophisticated engineering adapted to local water conditions. The stream flows varies with seasons, requiring adjustments to wheel pitch and gate positions that control water flow. Too little water, and the stones turn too slowly to grind effectively. Too much, and the mechanism operates so rapidly that flour overheats and becomes bitter. You spend morning hours helping Sister Joan adjust the mill works, learning the subtle signs that indicate optimal operation. The sound of properly adjusted millstones creates a particular rhythm, steady and musical, that experienced millers can recognize from considerable distance. When stones slip out of alignment, the sound changes, warning operators to make corrections before damage occurs. The flour produced by this mill feeds not only the convent, but also provides income through sales to local bakers who prize its quality. The sisters' reputation for producing superior flour brings customers from villages many miles distant, their purchases providing coins that buy necessities the convent cannot produce: iron tools, salt, cloth for habits, writing materials for the scriptorium. The business relationships between the convent and outside world require careful navigation of religious principles and practical necessity. The sisters must earn money to survive while maintaining their spiritual focus, must deal with merchants and traders while preserving their separation from worldly concerns. Mother Superior handles these negotiations with wisdom gained through decades of experience, protecting the community's interests without compromising its values. The workshop where tools are maintained and repaired showcases medieval craftsmanship at its finest. Sister Anne, who learned metalworking from her father before entering religious life, understands iron and steel with intuitive knowledge that cannot be taught through books alone. She can judge the temperature of heated metal by its color, knows when steel reaches the precise hardness required for different tools, understands how carbon content affects working properties of various alloys. The forge burns charcoal made from wood cut in the convent's forest, processed in kilns that reduce hardwood to pure carbon while capturing byproducts useful for other purposes. The charcoal burns hotter and cleaner than wood alone, reaching temperatures necessary for metalworking while producing minimal smoke that might disturb the community's peace. You work the bellows that feeds air to the forge fire, feeling the heat radiating from glowing coals as Sister Anne shapes hot metal with hammer blows that ring through the workshop like irregular bells. Each strike serves a specific purpose, gradually transforming raw iron into tools that will serve the community for years. A poorly forged hoe might break during critical planting season, leaving gardens untended. A well-made blade will hold its edge through countless harvestings. The tools themselves represent accumulated knowledge about what works best for specific tasks. Hoe blades shaped to particular angles cut through soil efficiently while conserving the user's strength. Knife edges ground to precise bevels hold sharpness longer than those shaped carelessly. Axe heads balanced to distribute weight optimally reduce fatigue during long hours of wood cutting. Sister Anne maintains detailed knowledge about each tool's history and condition, knowing which ones require immediate attention and which can wait for less busy seasons. She keeps mental records of how different tools perform under various conditions. Information that guides decisions about repairs, replacements, and improvements to existing designs. The textile workshop produces cloth for habits, bed linens, and other necessities that would otherwise require expensive purchases from outside merchants. Sister Mary spins thread from flax grown in convent fields, her hands moving with practiced efficiency that transforms raw plant fibers into strong, smooth yarn suitable for weaving into durable cloth. The spinning wheel, built by a craftsman who understood the physics of rotating machinery, multiplies the speed at which individual fibers can be twisted into continuous thread. Sister Mary's feet work the treadle that maintains wheel rotation while her hands guide fibers onto the spinning bobbin, creating thread so even and strong that cloth woven from it will last for years of hard use. You learn to card wool using tools studded with wire teeth that align individual fibers and remove tangles and debris. The process requires patience and rhythm, gentle motions that separate and straighten without breaking delicate strands. Properly carded wool spins easily into thread that creates warm, durable cloth ideal for habits that must withstand years of daily wear. The dyeing process transforms plain cloth into the black habits that mark the sisters as brides of Christ. The dye comes from oak galls, small growths that form on oak trees when certain insects lay eggs in bark tissue. These galls, when boiled with iron-rich water, produce deep black color that penetrates cloth fibers thoroughly and resists fading even after countless washings. The dye workshop operates according to recipes preserved in manuscripts that record not only ingredients and proportions, but also the prayers that should accompany each stage of the process. The sisters believe that cloth dyed with prayer possesses protective properties beyond its physical characteristics. That habits created with proper devotion shield their wearers from spiritual as well as physical harm. The infirmary represents the convent's most sophisticated medical knowledge, accumulated through centuries of caring for sick sisters and villagers who seek healing when other remedies fail. Sister Magdalene, who serves as the community's physician, studied medicine through manuscripts copied from Arabic sources that preserve Greek medical knowledge lost in the Western world for centuries. Her medicine chest contains remedies for dozens of ailments, each prepared according to formulas that specify not only ingredients and proportions, but also the proper times for gathering, processing, and administering medicines. She knows that some herbs lose potency if harvested during the wrong moon phase, that certain preparations work better when made during specific seasons, that the prayers spoken during medicine making effect healing outcomes in ways that rational minds cannot explain. You help Sister Magdalene prepare tinctures and salves, learning to recognize the subtle signs that indicate when extractions are complete, when mixtures have reached optimal potency, when medicines are ready for use. The work requires attention to details that can mean the difference between healing and harm. Temperatures that must be maintained within narrow ranges. Timing that must be precise to the hour. Proportions that must be measured exactly. The medical knowledge preserved here includes surgical techniques that most physicians lack, procedures for setting broken bones, methods for treating wounds that have saved lives when trained surgeons were days away. Sister Magdalene has delivered babies when midwives failed, has lanced infected wounds that threatened lives, has prepared the dying for their final journey. with medicines that ease pain while preserving consciousness for last confession. The surgical instruments she maintains were forged by Sister Anne, according to designs preserved in medical manuscripts. Each tool shaped for specific purposes that require precision impossible to achieve with ordinary knives or needles. Curved needles for suturing wounds follow the natural contours of human tissue. Bone saws cut cleanly without splintering. Forceps grip firmly without causing additional damage to delicate tissues. The preparation of surgical instruments involves knowledge that bridges the gap between metalworking and medicine. Steel must be hardened enough to hold sharp edges while remaining flexible enough to avoid breaking under stress. Surfaces must be polished smooth to prevent bacterial infection, a concept the sisters understand intuitively even without knowledge of microscopic organisms. You observe Sister Magdalene examining a young novice who arrived yesterday complaining of abdominal pain. Her examination follows systematic procedures learned from Greek medical texts, methodical palpation that locates areas of tenderness, observation of symptoms that indicate specific conditions. She knows that proper diagnosis requires patient observation as well as theoretical knowledge. That healing begins with understanding exactly what has gone wrong. The herbs she selects for treatment grow in the convent garden, according to careful plans that ensure availability of necessary medicines year-round. Peppermint for digestive disorders, willow bark for pain relief, foxglove for heart conditions. Each plant cultivated with understanding of its therapeutic properties and proper application. The garden design integrates medical necessity with spiritual symbolism, creating spaces where healing and prayer intersect naturally. The monastery day continues with work that transforms raw materials into necessities that sustain community life. In the scriptorium, sisters bent over copying tables preserve knowledge that might otherwise disappear during times when libraries burn and scholars flee. Their careful script reproduces not only religious texts, but also treatises on agriculture, medicine, natural philosophy, and practical arts that keep civilization functioning during turbulent periods. Sister Catherine's copying table receives optimal light from windows designed specifically for detailed work. Their glass clear enough to illuminate manuscripts while filtering harsh rays that would strain eyes during long hours of concentration. The table itself, built from oak aged for decades before construction, provides a stable surface that doesn't shift or vibrate when scribes work rapidly. The parchment used for important manuscripts comes from carefully prepared animal skins, treated with lime and stretched on frames until they achieve the smooth, durable surface required for permanent records. Lesser documents use paper, made from linen rags, processed in mills that reduce cloth to pulp that can be reformed into sheets suitable for temporary correspondence. The inks mixed in the scriptorium combine practical chemistry with aesthetic considerations, creating colors that remain bright for centuries while resisting fading or smudging. Black ink comes from oak galls mixed with iron-rich water, producing permanent marks that penetrate parchment fibers deeply. Colored inks use minerals ground to powder and suspended in solutions that allow precise control over hue and intensity. You spend hours learning to prepare writing surfaces, scraping parchment smooth with curved knives that remove imperfections without creating holes, ruling lines with instruments that ensure consistent spacing between text rows. The work requires patience and precision, understanding that poorly prepared surfaces will frustrate scribes and potentially ruin valuable manuscripts. The illuminated letters that decorate important texts represent artistic skills passed down through generations of sisters who understood that beautiful books honor God while making knowledge more accessible to readers. Gold leaf applied to initial letters catches candlelight and reflects it back, making text visible even in dim lighting conditions common in medieval interiors. The pigments used for illuminations come from sources scattered across the known world, each color representing extensive trade networks that connect the convent to distant lands. Ultramarine blue, ground from lapis lazuli mined in Afghanistan, costs more than its weight in gold. Vermilion red comes from cinnabar processed in specialized workshops that understand the dangerous chemistry involved in creating stable color. Sister Margaret, who specializes in illuminated manuscripts, can look at a text and visualize immediately how decorative elements should be arranged to enhance readability while creating visual beauty. Her designs incorporate symbolic elements that add layers of meaning to written words, transforming simple text into complex communications that speak simultaneously to mind and soul. The bindery produces covers that protect valuable manuscripts from damage while making them beautiful enough to honor their contents. Leather covers, tooled with decorative patterns, provide durable protection against moisture and insects that would destroy exposed pages. Metal clasps and corner reinforcements forged in the convent workshop ensure that books remain closed during transport and storage. The processes involved in bookbinding require understanding of materials, science that few possess, knowledge of how different components age and interact over time. Adhesives must bond strongly without becoming brittle. Threads must maintain flexibility while providing secure stitching. Covers must expand and contract with humidity changes without warping or cracking. You learn to sew signatures, folded sheets that form book sections, using techniques that create bindings strong enough to withstand centuries of use. The stitching follows patterns developed through trial and error over generations, methods that distribute stress evenly and prevent pages from loosening or tearing away from spines. The library itself represents accumulated wisdom gathered over centuries, manuscripts collected through purchase, gift, and copying projects that preserve knowledge from classical antiquity through contemporary scholarship. The collection includes works on theology, philosophy, medicine, natural science, agriculture, and practical arts, creating a repository of human learning that serves both the convent and the surrounding region. The organization of this library follows systems developed by scholars who understood that knowledge becomes useless if it cannot be located when needed. Manuscripts are cataloged according to subject matter, author, and date of creation, with cross references that help researchers find related materials. The catalog itself represents years of careful work, systematic examination of every text to determine its contents and proper classification. The preservation methods used in the library ensure that valuable manuscripts survive for future generations. Books are stored in wooden cases that protect against moisture and insects, while allowing air circulation necessary to prevent mold and mildewing. Especially valuable texts receive additional protection through careful wrapping and storage in sealed containers that exclude harmful environmental factors. Sister Joan, who serves as librarian, knows the location and contents of every manuscript in the collection, maintaining mental catalogs that allow her to locate specific information quickly. Her knowledge extends beyond simple organization to deep familiarity with contents, enabling her to guide researchers to materials that might not be obviously relevant, but contain information useful for their purposes. The afternoon brings different work, tasks that require physical strength and endurance, rather than delicate precision. You join sisters in the laundry, where clothing and linens are washed using methods that combine practical chemistry with back-breaking labor. The washing requires precise understanding of how different fabrics respond to various treatments. Knowledge that prevents damage while ensuring thorough cleaning. The soap used for washing comes from the convent's own production. Animal fats combined with lye made from wood ash according to formulas that produce effective cleaning agents without harsh chemicals that would damage delicate fabrics. The soap making process requires careful attention to proportions and temperatures that can mean the difference between useful product and dangerous waste. You help carry water from the well, buckets filled from depths that tap into springs fed by underground rivers flowing beneath the convent ground. The water quality affects everything from cooking to medicine preparation, requiring constant testing through observation of clarity, taste, and effects on health. Good water supports community health, while contaminated sources can spread disease rapidly through enclosed populations. The washing process itself involves techniques passed down through generations of sisters who understood that cleanliness prevents disease while maintaining the dignity appropriate to religious life. Different fabrics require specific treatments washed in cool water to prevent shrinking. Linen scrubbed vigorously to remove accumulated dirt. Silk treated gently to preserve delicate fibers. The drying yard spread clean laundry on grass and bushes where sun and air complete the cleaning process while adding the fresh scent of growing plants to dried cloth. The arrangement of drying laundry follows patterns that maximize air circulation while protecting valuable items from wind damage. Methods developed through centuries of experience with local weather patterns. As afternoon shadows lengthen, you join the evening tasks that prepare the convent for night's rest. Candles must be trimmed and replaced where necessary, ensuring adequate light for evening prayers and late night emergencies. The candle making workshop produces these necessities from beeswax purchased from local beekeepers whose hives provide the pure wax that burns cleanly without producing harmful smoke. The process of candle making requires understanding of how wax behaves at different temperatures, how wick materials affect burning characteristics, how proper shaping ensures even combustion that doesn't waste expensive material. Well-made candles provide steady light for hours, while poorly constructed ones drip, smoke, and extinguish prematurely. You learn to dip wicks repeatedly in molten wax, building up layers that create candles of proper thickness and shape. The rhythm of dipping becomes meditative, repetitive motions that allow thoughts to settle into prayer, while hands continue their practiced work. The finished candles will light prayers that rise to heaven like visible offerings, their flames carrying human hopes toward divine attention. The day's work concludes with inspection of tasks completed and planning for tomorrow's necessities. Mother Superior moves through workshops and gardens, observing progress and offering guidance based on decades of experience managing complex communities. Her knowledge encompasses every aspect of convent life, from theological questions to practical problems that arise in isolated communities. The evening meal, prepared from ingredients grown and preserved by the sisters themselves, represents the fruition of labor that began before dawn. Bread baked from grain ground in the convent mill, vegetables harvested from gardens tended with prayer, preserved meats that will sustain the community through winter months when fresh food becomes scarce. The kitchen where this meal was prepared showcases medieval cooking techniques adapted to community needs, methods that feed 40 Three Sisters nutritious meals while conserving expensive ingredients and fuel. The cooks understand how to stretch limited resources without compromising health, how to create variety within constraints imposed by season, location, and religious dietary requirements. As you gather in the refectory for the evening meal, you reflect on the day's labor that transforms simple materials into necessities that sustain both body and soul. Every task, from the most mundane to the most skilled, participates in the larger work of creating community life that honors God while serving human needs. The work itself becomes prayer, each careful motion and offering laid on the altar of daily devotion. The bell has spoken, but the silence still holds secrets. If you felt the weight of prayer, the chill of stone, and the mystery behind every echo, then part 2 will take you deeper. Watch the next chapter to uncover what the morning light reveals inside the convent walls.